Welcome to the 700 Club. Well, spring is here, and there's signs of America actually returning to normal. More and more states are opening up as COVID cases go down. New infections are dropping to levels not seen in 6 months.
Overseas in India, it's a very different story. Hospitals are overrun by hundreds of thousands of new cases every day. So will the 617 variant from India cause another surge in the United States? Here's Jenna Browder with the latest.
Things appear to be looking up in the United States as more cities and states open up. Nearly 1/3 of all Americans are fully vaccinated, and about half have at least one shot. And that's good because public health experts say they should protect against the new, highly transmissible Indian variant.
Our vaccines are going to hold up against the variants from India.
The 617 variant has already been identified in 3 states, and beginning today, the U.S. will ban travel from India by non-U.S. citizens. This as the U.S. and other countries rush in aid, and hospitals there continue to see staggering numbers. On Monday, nearly 370,000 new cases and more than 3,400 deaths reported. Stateside, the demand for shots is way down, dropping 26% in the last 3 weeks to 2.4 million doses a day, a cause for concern for health experts.
What we want is to get to a level of herd immunity where you can go about your day-to-day life and not have to worry about exposure.
Still, the average number of daily cases is steadily dropping, now under 50,000 for the first time since October. And more cities and states are lifting restrictions. 80,000 government workers in New York are headed back to the office. The governors of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut allowing more businesses to fully open May 19th.
This means that the events that we all associate with a summer can all go forward.
And with more people getting vaccinated, there's an ongoing debate about mask mandates, especially outdoors. One Oregon high school adjusting its policy after a runner wearing a mask collapsed at the finish line. Maggie Williams on CBN's Faith Nation.
I started out and then I barely had anything left on the last 100, and then about 10 meters before I just felt my muscles start seizing up. It was really weird. And then everything just went blurry and I just passed out for a second. And luckily it was right before the finish line, so I crossed with my head.
To be running at full speed and then black out and hit the ground. I'm just so thankful that she had some guardian angels watching her. Scripture was right and God was protecting her.
And we should mention Florida is suspending all COVID-related public health orders statewide. And Oklahoma is expected to follow suit today by withdrawing its state of emergency. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
In other news, nearly 24 tornadoes tore through the South yesterday, and more severe weather is expected today. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That is right, Gordon. The South is bracing for more storms today after at least 23 tornadoes swept through the region in 24 hours. In Georgia, 2 people died from the twisters. One man was killed when a tree and power lines fell on top of his vehicle. A woman died after a tree smashed into her home. A drone at close range captured this tornado moving across northeast Mississippi. Today, the region is expecting wind gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, golf ball size hail, and possibly more tornadoes. President Biden is raising America's refugee cap, this following a backlash from progressive Democrats and some religious conservatives after he stopped short of increasing it last week. Now he's upping the number from an all-time low of 15,000 to 62,500. The move is mostly symbolic, the president acknowledging it's practically impossible to admit that many refugees by the end of the fiscal year in September. However, he said he plans to meet a goal of admitting 125,000 refugees in 2022. Well, at least 20 people are dead and more than 70 injured in Mexico City after a section of a subway train track collapsed as it traveled across a bridge. One car split in 2 as the train plunged to the street below. Passengers trapped in cars were left dangling from the bridge and were trapped underneath rubble. Dozens of rescuers are searching through the wreckage. Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum has been updating the rescue efforts.
So far, no more people have been found trapped, but the ministry is working with all its team together with the city government civil protection team and the fire brigade to see if any other people have been found.
The Attorney General's office will conduct a formal investigation into the metro train crash. Well, turning to the Middle East, where Israel's economy has been devastated by COVID, travel restrictions have shut out millions of tourists who visit every year. Now, as the virus is retreating, officials are working to open it back up. CBN's Chris Mitchell reports from Tel Aviv.
In 2019, Israel set a record for tourism when 4.5 million visitors came to the Holy Land. Then the 2020 pandemic slammed the door, causing the number of tourists to plummet more than 80%, resulting in a loss of $8 billion. For more than a year, the COVID pandemic kept tourists from coming to visit Israel, like the city of Tel Aviv behind me. Now Israel's tourism ministry has a plan to reopen Israel to the world.
We are starting the first pilot on the 23rd of May. It will take place for a few weeks, by which we will bring in no more than 20 or more groups of tourists, fully vaccinated with travel agents, so that it can be monitored on one hand, and we can also learn from the lessons and improve the rules and see if things need to be improved.
Then, hopefully about a month later, an unlimited number of groups may be allowed in. By July, it's possible Israel will open its doors to individuals. Still, this timetable could change, since the health ministry recommended the May 23rd date be delayed until the end of June. Israel's reopening comes after an aggressive vaccination campaign that's seen most of the population vaccinated, with COVID rates dropping dramatically.
Israel is now fully open. The attractions, the restaurants, the hotels, our numbers of COVID-19 cases are getting fewer and fewer every day. We're waiting for you to come.
Incoming tourists, however, will have to jump through some hoops. The plan requires all to be fully vaccinated. They must have a negative COVID test before boarding the flight and then take an antibodies test upon arrival. Nearly half of all tourists coming here are Christian, because for many, coming to Israel is like a dream.
I want to say to Christians around the world that Israel is missing you and is looking forward to you coming and seeing all the sacred place and the history.
Yet some Christians in the U.S. remain reluctant to get the vaccine.
Unfortunately, I don't have very optimistic messages for them. Israel is now in a very, very good condition health-wise. It's a very healthy destination, and we cannot put that in danger.
While it's a small start, Israel hopes once again millions of visitors will return to the Holy Land. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Tel Aviv, Jaffa.
Thanks, Chris. Gordon, Israel, the EU, and so many other nations trying to jumpstart travel and tourism.
Well, Israel's leading the charge. They're obviously leading the world in getting vaccinations for their population. But their economy is heavily dependent on tourism, so they need to reopen. They need to reopen quickly. They're not like Australia, New Zealand, other successful countries that have reopened. But it's primarily because they banned all international travel, and they've done their part in terms of monitoring and tracing and all of those things. There's a new normal in the world today, and that is vaccination, tests. Can you get tested before you get on a plane? All of these things are going to be on our future.